Okay. Hi, Leah. How are you?
I'm pretty good, Douglas. Thanks for asking.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. It's nice to have you here. So, we're going to be talking about your book today. The book is called The Soul of the Mountain. How many books do you have published at this point?
I actually have three novels published,
Okay.
so this is the third.
Have you been a published author for your entire life, or have you done something else as well?
Oh, my goodness, no. I've done other things as well as be a published author. I'm also a psychotherapist. That's really how I earned my living for many years. And I teach within a particular spiritual tradition. So those are the other two um, loves that consume my time.
Okay. Do you want to elaborate on that a little? Get to know the author kind of
Get to
segment of this
know.
interview?
Well, let's see. Psychotherapist, most people know what that is. It's basically really supporting people in their unfolding journey and helping them know more deeply themselves and resolve whatever conflicts are in the way of their really leading their deepest and best life. So that's the psychotherapy part. The spiritual teacher is not so different. It just opens up different possibilities, a kind of larger playing field for consciousness to emerge and to develop. So, yeah, I've been doing that for, my goodness, maybe 15 years, something like that.
Okay, so
And
when you,
then, yeah,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
when you say spiritual, you mean not necessarily religious, but just spiritual,
No,
right?
definitely not religious.
Okay.
Definitely not religious. More along the lines of Buddhism. It's not a Buddhist tradition per se, but along the lines of a more Buddhist type of tradition.
All right. And so why did you decide to start writing? You said you had three published novels. Do your
I do.
novels have anything to do with your psychotherapy work, or are they not related to that?
It's not that my psychotherapy work and work as a spiritual teacher doesn't come into the novels, but no, the novels were a completely uh, different. They came in really on their own. I was not looking for them. I wasn't really looking even to be a writer. Before this, I was actually a songwriter, and that was fun. And it was very gratifying because a song would come in, and within a week, there it would be. It would be complete and ready to go. A novel, of course, takes way, 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 way longer to write and rewrite and rewrite. But the first novel, all of them really came in on their own. And probably other authors say this, but it was really, really true for me. I was in no way looking to write what I have ended up writing about, but it either came in a dream or some sort of a very clear vision. Uh, the first one, the character that it was about was somebody I knew absolutely nothing about, but she really wanted that her book written. So we just, I say we because it really did feel like this character and and myself wrote the first book. So none of them really have to do with directly with my own life or my own life experience. Although, of course, that comes into the book in many ways. Mostly, I would say my after working with people for so long, I have a deeper understanding, I guess, of people, who they are, how they're, what motivates them, what the difficulties are. So I have a compassion and curiosity about people in general, and that includes the characters that I write about.
It's interesting you said you were a songwriter because I am also a songwriter and have been since I was, I think, 16 years old was my first one. So a lot longer than I've been doing this show. What kind of songs do you write?
I must say, did I write?
Or did
Because
you
the
write?
minute
Yeah.
I've been more involved with the novels, I would say, honestly, if we were to put a genre, they were more folk songs in the sense that they were simple. You know, I probably knew 15 chords on a guitar, something like that. So they weren't really, really complex, but they were simple and straightforward. So I would say probably folk. And yourself, I'm just curious, Douglas, what was your genre?
Well, I would say 70s, sort of singer
Mm.
songwriter. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a piano player, so I wasn't the
Ah,
typical guitar kind of singer.
strumming.
Yeah, Elton John, Billy Joel, that sort
Oh,
of, yeah.
oh, some of my faves.
Those would be
Oh,
my
lovely.
heroes. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
certainly.
yeah.
Okay, well, let's pivot over to your book because we are quickly running out of
Okay.
time.
Yes,
So the
yes.
latest book is called The Soul of the Mountain. Give us a synopsis of the book.
Let's see. It begins after the prologue, which sets up the book, with a unassuming Manhattan social justice lawyer named Luce, who is really, really just living her life, but gets a visit from a Native American woman whose name is Violet, who comes, and Luce thinks that she's coming for pro bono work. She's coming from South Dakota. But it turns out that she leaves Luce with a nugget of gold that she says, that Violet says, belongs with Luce. And that starts a series of changes in Luce's life. She can't sleep. She keeps having this dream of a raven, and so forth and so on, until she is finally goes to, after going to a Jungian analyst and therapy and so forth and so on, goes to an urban shaman who basically tells her she needs to go out west and speak to the person who gave her the nugget if she wants to ever sleep again, basically. So she and her friend, her best friend, Suze, who is a Mayflower descendant, very wealthy, but has a conscience, uh, go out west, begin their journey out west to the reservation with the intention of just basically returning this nugget and Luce returning to her life. But when they get there, of course, and on the way, a whole different scenario begins to open up. And they meet many people on the reservation, one of whom is a character, very charismatic. He's one of my favorite characters, I have to say, who calls himself facetiously Roy Rogers. And he's a very, yeah, I know, he likes to make fun of things. And he's very lighthearted and yet extremely deep at the same time and very mysterious. So when they're out there, a couple of things happen. There's many weavings, of course, as books have, but one is that Suze really gets inspired to build a community college there to help the reservation. She does have she wants to do some sort of reparation work, and she's a very fun character. And of course, part of it is she has to convince her very prejudiced relatives who are in charge of the trust fund. So that's one whole stream. But the mainstream of the story then comes to the place where Luce and Roy um, take a journey together. And their journey, Luce doesn't know why they're taking this journey, but they take a journey into the wilderness, into the hills there. And on the way to where they're going, meet a number of very interesting friends of Roy Rogers, including a tree, a forest person, and an ET who calls himself Kris. Actually, they call him Kris. Uh, and they play instrumental roles later on. But finally, and as they're going, of course, they're falling in love. But as they get there, when they get to the mountain, which is where they were headed. Luce didn't know, but Roy did. They actually entered the mountain and like literally go inside the mountain. And here they meet the people of the Sojan. It's a Middle Earth civilization who have been living as stewards of the mountain. And as it turns out, this mountain, and this is described before in another part of the story, this is a very sacred mountain to the Lakota, Sioux, and other Native Americans. And the backstory on this, just because it would make sense to what they're doing now, is that, and this is a true story, this is true, that when the treaties were going down in terms of where the reservation, where the Native Americans would be given their reservation lands in exchange for peace, the Black Hills in South Dakota were part of the reservation because the Black Hills are very, very sacred land, still are, to the Native peoples. They believe that that is where creation arises from. And they used it for many, many years for ceremony, for vision quests. It was their sacred place. And when gold was discovered there in the late 1800s, the US government took it back so that the settlers could go. So basically, there could be a gold rush. And it was a very deep wound, still is. I mean, there's a whole other story about the mountain, which is really that it's still not resolved, even to this day. So that's the story behind what happens in when they go into the mountain, the sacred mountain. And as it turns out, they're told that the soul of the mountain, of this sacred mountain, has been stolen, basically, and exiled into the underworld. And she was susceptible to that because she was so ravaged by the gold rush. Her body was ravaged.
Okay.
She felt it as being ravaged.
I've got to interrupt you here because we've got just about a minute left. So we've got to kind of wind this down.
Yeah.
Go ahead and just finish your statement.
They rescue the soul of the mountain.
Okay. Okay.
So that's what they're there for. And then other things happen after that. But that's the culmination. So there you go.
All right. Well, don't give any more away because we want people to buy the book and read it. Yeah.
I won't.
Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on. What genre would you put this book in? Is like Lord of the Rings or no?
Maybe, but not quite as... It's somewhere between, there's magical realism in it, but there's also a whole other part that's not magical realism. So maybe Lord of the Rings. That's...
Or what was the one with Harrison Ford? Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Yes. That's more like it.
Okay.
It would be more like Raiders of the Lost. Yeah, you got it. Thank you. Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Raiders of the Lost Ark. Okay.
There. So
All
thank
right,
you.
Good. Well, listen, we do have to wind this down. Thank you so much for coming on. Last question. Do you have a website that you want to give out?
LeahChytenAuthor.com.
Okay. And there's
All one word.
information about your books on that site?
Mm-hmm. Yes, there is.
Okay. And this book has been released, right?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Okay. Well, Leah, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was nice meeting you, and best of luck.
You too.